Madam Chair, can you check your microphone, please?
I must have turned it off instead of turning it on. Good morning and welcome to Cuyahoga County's Community Development Committee meeting. It's Monday, October 28th, and it is approximately 10:15 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Here. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
You have a quorum, and let the record reflect that council members Miller and Turner are also in attendance.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay, we have minutes from the last meeting on October 7th. Are there any comments or additions that need to be made?
No, I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Madam Clerk, what is before us this morning?
Resolution 2024-0354, awarding a total sum not to exceed $36,293.06 to the City of Garfield Heights for the St. John Lutheran Church Gym Flooring Project from the District 8 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
And who's coming to join us to make a presentation on this? Mr. Mayor, I see that you're present. Are you presenting to us this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the record, if you'd identify yourself with your name and your position with the organization?
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Matt Burke, and I am the mayor of the city of Garfield Heights. Along with me in the audience, I do have our council president, Avery Johnson, and our recreation director, Mr. Paul Burke, who spells his name differently than me. We're not related, but I guess we are in this together. I just want to first start by saying thank you to this committee. Earlier this year, we came here and we asked for some funding to help us with our outdoor basketball facility that we had planned. Our Parks Master Plan indicated that a lot of the residents were looking to transition tennis courts to basketball courts. And I did include some pictures, and if you look at the second page of pictures, you'll see Debelak Park. I know Miss Turner was there with us about a week or two ago, and you'll see what we've done there by adding some playground equipment, a new rubberized surface for the playground equipment, and also the striping of two of the basketball courts. We literally turned the tennis courts into basketball courts. Page 3 shows some of the children that you see on those courts. And in the very middle section, the three young gentlemen there with the panda bear on his shirt, just want to let you know that those three individuals could not even wait for the courts to be done and open. They saw the hoops up and they literally broke in to play basketball. And I caught them in there and I just started talking to them, and I'll never forget those smiles on their faces. And then underneath that, you could see where some of the kids are congregating. I will say that on any given day, from the time that they get out of school or on Saturday, there's 40 to 60 children out there on that court. We're actually starting to see where fathers are coming there with their children, and they've done their due diligence to even take 2 full basketball courts and work it out amongst themselves to play half-court basketball together, which is really good to see. We're actually going to take the pickleball and tennis court that we had there and transition that next year into a brand-new basketball court as well, along with where we have our skate park now. We took that out and we're going to put the pickleball courts there. That has been a very vibrant part of our city since this creation, and I just want to thank you for it. But that's not the reason why I'm here today. I'm here today because as the weather gets colder, soon you'll start to see where the weather will not allow these kids to be able to play on this park, which is why I'm here to talk to you about St. John Lutheran's indoor basketball and volleyball court. For better than a decade, St. John Lutheran Church has made this basketball court that you see on the first page of pictures available for the youth of the city to come and play. And as you can see, the court over the years has been missing some tiles, and they've patched tiles of different colors into what was already there. You can see each tile is kind of pillowed up a little bit in the seams, and it just has seen its day. There's missing tiles, cracked tiles. The church has put some renovation into this by painting the walls, and they've just recently, through a donation, got their lights redone in the entire gymnasium. And what we're asking for now, we've kind of partnered with them, is to see if we can get the $36,000 to provide a brand-new gymnasium floor that will have the tile striping for the basketball court, and then they will come in and put a volleyball striping over that as well. And I feel that this is something that has been very positive on the outside courts, will continue to give the youth of our city something to do inside when the weather deteriorates. It has proven, and I've listed some things here, that it has helped with engagement of the community. And at the end of the day, I think that's what's been important, and an initiative that we need to do to bring people together and further help with the divide that we had seen years ago with Garfield Heights. As you know, Garfield Heights transitioned from a predominantly white community to now a predominantly African-American community. And we've got to bring people together, and this type of facility helps to bring those people together. And so I just want to ask for your support and ask for consideration on this particular project. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It appears that you only need $36,900 and some dollars. Sorry, $36,293. Is that because you have an estimate from a contractor?
We have a few estimates. I work directly with the distributor, a local distributor here in Valley View, who is also headquartered out of Cincinnati, on getting locating the actual tile striping that is made and getting the tile. I've coordinated the floor covering professional that knows how to put that in. It's not like you can just throw these tiles in. There's got to be a specific way that you do it. And then, unfortunately, they don't manufacture the volleyball portion of it. So after the contractor comes in, step number one is he's going to take up that tile that's there. Then he's going to scarify what's there and put a new subfloor, which will help reinforce what's there now, because as you know, when you bounce a basketball, there's deflection of the floor. So when you reinforce that, put a brand new subsurface down, when you lay the new tile, you're laying it on a much better substrate. Once that's done, then the company will come in and stripe the existing, or stripe the volleyball lines in, and then they will seal the floor as well.
So you've coordinated between the supplier and the vendor of the actual labor?
Yes.
Firm that will do the labor, okay. So do you have a backup plan in case they present you with in cost increases?
We don't. I believe the city would just have to look at our coffers to make that available.
Okay. Questions from my colleagues?
Madam Chair.
Mr. President?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And first, congratulations, Mayor, just on all the hard work that you're doing in the city of Garfield. You have been a strong leader, and it has really been my honor to work with you.
Thank you.
I've had the, I guess, the pleasure of knowing 3 mayors in the city of Garfield. And you're correct about the transition. I've seen it from 14 years ago when it was, I don't know, 10, 15% African-American. And we know the challenges of transition, and you have navigated them well. I'll say this, I always look at East Cleveland as one of the first examples where there was no lending, the redlining, and to look back 40 plus years from when East Cleveland transitioned to today, you can see what happens when there's, when the moment is not met, when that transition happens. But you have been there. We've talked for years about education, closing the achievement gap, helping the children in terms of education. Again, lending, the need for loans, and make sure that home ownership ratios stay high, but you need those banks to participate. And just a small project like this, I don't even want to call it small, but an important project. We're just having a recreation for the young people and the partnership with the church to have those kids and to hear that even the fathers are there with the children. That strengthens the family. That's community development. So you are hitting it from the highest levels to the granular level. So I look at this project and I'm happy to be a part of it, and I just encourage you and the president of council and your recreation director all to continue doing the good work that you're doing. And again, I'm glad to be a part and be able to do this in a small way.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Right.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Turner.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Council President Jones for allowing me to come into his district and represent him in his absence for the grand opening of the courts. As you know, I love sports. I learned how to play basketball on the local basketball court in my neighborhood when we lived in the Glenville area. And some of the skills that I learned there enabled me to go on to college and play at the collegiate level. So I know how important an investment in the community is for our youth. And I also just wanted to say that Channel 19 is on their way. I had gotten a phone call from a friend at Channel 19 when the story ran initially about the church needing a floor. And I reached out to the council president and told him that I had him if he needed some support. I know it was already on his radar, but again, just knowing how important an investment is like this for young people, I was willing to help. But he got it. He got it. So I just want to thank you, Council President, for your continued investment in our young people's future.
Great. And thank you for showing up. When you have a win like this, you forget to thank everybody. So I appreciate you coming out for me on that day. Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we move this to the full council. Is this for 3 readings?
Yes, it is,
Yes,
because
for
it's
3
ARPA
readings.
funds.
Yes, 3 readings.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. I'd like to also add my name to this, Madam Clerk. Motion was made and seconded. Madam Turner, would you like to add yours too?
Through the
Ms.
chair,
Turner would-
yes. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, this moves forward. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Please
it.
add my name as well.
Madam Clerk, did you hear Mr. Miller would like
Yes, I
his
did.
name
Thank
added?
you.
Through the chair, if I could ask the mayor and his team if they could stick around for a few minutes. Mr. Maloney asked, he would like to talk to you.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, who's next?
Resolution 2024-0375, amending Resolution 2022-0244, dated September 13th, 2022, which authorized affordable housing loans to various organizations in the total amount not to exceed $4,550,000 for the Affordable Housing Gap Financing Program by removing the Frontline Development Group LLC loan in its entirety, amending the funding to reflect the removal of Frontline Development Group LLC, replacing the Director of Development with the Director of Housing and Community Development in Section 2, and extending the sunset provision contained in Section 3 to 12/31/2025.
Good morning, Madam Director. If you would put your name on the record for us, please.
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson, Director, Housing and Community Development. This morning, we are looking to amend this resolution due to some changes that occurred since approval. The request to remove Frontline Development Group is for the Allen Estates project that they had originally put forth. We have since replaced and had your approval for Gordon's Crossing, which the developer Sheila Wright indicated needed to go forward much more expeditiously than the Allen Estates project, which I believe they've changed the name of and other stuff. With doing so, we changed the funding source as well. So Gordon's Crossing was changed to be funded with ERA2 funds, therefore releasing the original $600,000 was general fund due to ARPA. So that's the front line. Emerald Development and Economic Network, that's Eden. We are processing that now for $450,000. The concern was that we wouldn't have it completed by 12/31/2024, so that's why you see 2025. It will not take until December 31st, 2025, but it allows us time, especially with the holidays forthcoming. Lutheran is the same situation, although we did change it from a loan to a grant because Lutheran has been a fantastic partner with us in providing what we know as transitional housing for those coming out of homelessness, to provide them with a safe, sanitary environment with support services while they are transitioning from homelessness to this transitional housing, which eventually they will be able to transition to market rate housing. Northwest Neighborhoods. This is the Karam Senior Living Project, where the administration has funding. Councilman Sweeney also has funding. And
What's the location of the Karam Senior Housing?
I didn't bring the address with me. It's west. This is the one that has the library.
It's the transition, it's transportation as well as the library
Yes.
and housing.
Yes.
It's approximately $35 million.
Yep. That's the one. And I have given them until December 31st of this year to
They had a
close the gap.
Yes. How big is the gap still?
It keeps changing, unfortunately, Councilwoman. So I'm not positive. So I check with them every 2 to 3 months and go, where are we? With the money involved, there's federal home dollars that I committed to this project almost 3 years ago.
They haven't been able to value engineer it down to
No.
what they have available in funds?
No, they've changed. They brought in a new entity to help them with the financing. That doesn't seem to be moving forward.
They left Enterprise?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, obviously I may need to talk with you off the record.
Yeah, and I can give anybody that wants all the details of where we've been and where we're going with this project. I have concerns to continue to hold funding that could be used for projects that could actually move forward now, especially affordable housing projects. So I have, again, given them a 12/31/2024 deadline to be able to close this loan. so that we can
2024 or
move forward.
2025?
2024. I gave them 2024 in writing.
When did they receive their tax credit allocation? Was it in 20 or 21?
I think it was 21. I have a couple that have sought extensions, and I think one of those is going to be heard this afternoon in the Economic Development Committee, because that's where it was approved, that we're extending the sunset date for the same reason. These folks are trying to get extensions on their tax credits.
Sorry. If you could move along, please.
Sure. The other 2804 Moreland is closed. CHN Housing Partners Scholar House is closed. The 1.5 million given to the Land Bank is working well. The Land Bank is providing funding to small developers who are taking single-family houses provided to them by the Land Bank, and these are small nonprofits, and they are rehabbing those homes and making them available for reentry citizens, people who are coming out of homelessness, domestic violence, and other issues. And I have a list. If anybody wants to see it, I will make sure that all council has the list of the projects that the Land Bank has already completed. And Eden's Phase 2 project is also already closed and moving forward.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues? What's the abstract or estimated number of housing units that will be provided by these 7 or 8 projects?
Well, the first 4, Frontline's coming off, and I believe,
That's why I said 7 or 8.
well, Gordon's Crossing, I believe, is about 55 affordable, but they have some market rate. Emerald is 6, so 6, 10, 61. It's over 100. I'd say close to 125 affordable housing units between these 8 projects, and hopefully we can get all of them to the point where they can close and move forward.
It's a nice number, but we still need close to 56,000 units of affordable housing in the Cuyahoga County marketplace.
Yes, we do.
We've got to encourage more folks to do this, and more folks to do it, and folks to do it on a timely basis.
Yes.
Other questions from my colleagues?
I was just thinking, and what you said was a mouthful, as important as it is, how do you actually do it? What is the mechanism to scale up to that level of development?
It's helping more developers have the skill sets to build this kind of project, take on this kind of debt, and getting the lenders on a regular basis to commit to buy the syndicated tax credits, to commit to do the construction financing, and to be patient when these projects take 6 months to a year longer than they originally estimated.
And if I may add, we the county, provide gap financing. The gap financing that we provide generally does not completely fill the gap. However, the funding that we receive from HUD has not changed in the amount. It's about 2.5 million. It can go up a little bit or down a little bit. So I fluctuate between $450,000 and $500,000 for these projects, where most of the developers need at least $1 million. And we were able to do several projects at $1 million with the emergency rental assistance funding and the general fund due to ARPA dollars, but all of that's going away. So funding for me to be able to assist in filling that gap is enormous.
You've done an incredible job here and just what's in front of us today. But to Cheryl's point of a strategy for scaling up in a transformative way, is that your wheelhouse too? Do you take that on as a big picture vision, or no? Just to get a sense of where to go to figure out who does this.
Council President, I have taken it on, and that was part of that pro-housing application that we submitted to HUD for $7 million. That is for the creation of affordable housing. So we look at all buckets that are available that would provide funding that we could assist in some small way in providing that gap to the developers. The private market is essential, the banks and other lenders, and being able to partner with them to be able to make these projects, even if it's one house at a time or 20, 25 units at a time. Every drop in the bucket helps us reach the goal of reducing the need for affordable housing in the county. So we just keep plugging at it.
So this the $7 million application you made, when do you hear, when do we know if we are awarded it or not?
Well, when we applied last year, HUD said, well, you'll know in January, and we found out in June. So this year, they said, you'll know in February. I think we're going to find out in June. I'm not holding my breath to hear the first of the year. If we do, it'll be a major surprise, but not counting on it.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the director. For which project or projects is the sunset being extended to 12/31/2025?
We are, to Councilman Miller, we are requesting it for all of the projects, just in case we hit a glitch somewhere, but I anticipate that all of these will close except for Northwest Neighborhood CDC. All of these will close either by the end of the year, but with the holidays, maybe the 1st of 2025. Northwest Neighborhoods, I am working very closely with, one, because of the amount of funding that they have from both council and the administration, and my concern that, I mean, this is a very worthwhile project and we need to see it happen. I need to figure out a way to help them get across whatever roadblocks they're currently facing.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that this move forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional conversation?
Madam
Hearing
Chair,
none.
was that motion for second reading or second reading suspension?
Second reading suspension.
Thank you.
Hearing no conversation from my colleagues, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition. Did I miss something, Ms. Simon? Hearing no opposition, this moves forward to the full council. Thank you. Madam
I'd like
Clerk?
the record to reflect that Ms. Simon is now in attendance.
Thank you.
Resolution 2024-0376, authorizing a contract with CHN Housing Partners in the amount not to exceed $5 million for housing counseling and program administration services of the Cuyahoga Property Tax Assistance Program to prevent tax foreclosure and displacement of homeowners facing financial hardship through provisions of direct taxpayer assistance, effective upon contract signature of all parties for a period of 2 years.
Mr. Treasurer, are you speaking to us this morning?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Brad Cromas, County Treasurer. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning and to share some information about our proposed taxpayer assistance program. So just by way of background and how we got here, in spring of this year, the Department of Senior and Adult Services commissioned a study through the Center on Community Solutions, asking seniors in our community what the impacts of inflation have been on them. And as a result of that survey, the feedback they received from our seniors was that the things that they felt would help them most with dealing with inflation were property tax relief of some variety, as well as direct cash assistance. So that was the initial context for some of these conversations. Of course, this is also our reassessment year, and as you all know, that has been a hot topic in the community. Average increase in property values of 32% across Cuyahoga County has created a lot of anxiety among our constituents, and particularly among the senior population. So there was a great deal of urgency to address those situations and the financial difficulties that are being faced by our most vulnerable seniors. There are a number of bills pending at the state legislature to address this issue and the root cause of the problem, which is the property taxation system in the state of Ohio. Unfortunately, none of those are moving forward at the pace that we need them to help people right now. And so while we continue to advocate for change at the state level, we know that there's work we can do in Cuyahoga County to help the very most vulnerable here. And so we were charged by Executive Ronayne with coming up with a solution to do that, and this proposal before you is the result of that. So the proposal contains two major provisions. One is direct cash assistance with property tax arrearages, and the other is housing counseling services. The housing counseling services piece, I would just point out, we believe is critical because it not only provides people with a direct relief for their exigent crisis, but also provides them the opportunity to have conversations with experts about how to set a budget and plan effectively for longer-term housing stability and success financially. So just to kind of walk you through that and what the rough outlines of the program are, it makes up to $10,000 available in one-time financial assistance to taxpayers who are struggling with paying their property taxes. That relief is targeted to folks who are over 70 years of age and who make $70,000 a year or less. It's available only on primary residences in the county. If there is a remaining delinquency over and above that $10,000 amount, we require our taxpayers to establish a delinquent tax payment contract with us. We are also requiring folks who participate in the program to participate in our Easy Pay monthly prepayment program, which again, we believe will help people stay stable and complete the program effectively. And again, as I mentioned, the last part and probably the most important part is that before they receive the assistance, they're required to engage in housing counseling services with our partners. The $10,000 may be used to pay for the arrearage itself, as well as payment of any current property taxes, payment of any late taxes that have not yet become certified delinquent, as well as the payment of any fees or that may be associated with a pending foreclosure action. So those are the broad outlines of the proposal that we had introduced at council last week. The changes since that time, we've been having some conversation internally about how we ensure that these funds are being used appropriately and not abused to pay off an arrearage and then flip the house and pocket that profit. So we have come up with two provisions that we think get at that. One is a residency duration requirement. So residents must have been in the home as a primary residence for 3 years prior to receiving relief. And then they have to stay in the home for 3 years after receiving relief. And this is just to give us some, again, some guardrails and some assurance that folks are using the program effectively. The intention for enforcement of that would be a note on the property that we would file with transfer and recording and then release after the 3-year period expires. So that's new since what you may have seen prior to today. In terms of what we're looking to do and how we're intending to pay for it, again, this is a 2-year pilot program that we envision running from December of this year through November of 2026. Our proposed budget is an amount not to exceed $5 million. That's $2.5 million per pilot program year. $2 million for direct assistance and $500,000 for housing counseling services. And there is a breakout of what we envision that looking like on the bottom of this slide. Salaries and fringe benefits and the provision of the services. This is just for the $500,000 piece, the housing counseling services piece, to make that clear. And then the last line there, direct assistance, covers that. So this is to show that, again, the vast majority of the allocation we're asking for is to flow directly to helping the taxpayers and to providing the counseling services. The funding source for this is our delinquent tax and tax assessment and collection fund. So it's a special revenue fund, and it should be budget neutral from a general revenue fund standpoint. So that's the rough outlines there. I'm pleased to be joined this morning by representatives from CHN Housing Partners, who is our designated partner, Nina Holzer and Laura Bustani, and Nina will come forward to share with you some information about the application process. Yeah.
I forgot to turn my microphone on. Before we move to them, can we ask a couple of questions on the administrative piece?
Certainly.
So for example, how did you decide on $10,000? How did you decide on 70 years of age? And how did you decide on incomes of less than 70,000?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So the answers to those are as follows. The $10,000 amount is a direct tie back to a pandemic era program that CHN had administered that used money from the state housing fund to help provide people direct assistance to stay in their home. And that program was really directed at, again, just that direct assistance. We didn't want folks to be on the street in the middle of a pandemic. There was a public health element. It did not have a housing counseling component to it, though, and we think in reviewing it that that was kind of the piece that was missing that would make it more effective. So that's where that $10,000 figure comes from. In terms of the 70,000 and over age 70 provisions, those come from a proposal that is being circulated at the State House right now that is supported by the Ohio Auditors Association. So that is a provision from the County Auditors Association. And in our internal conversations, we felt that it was important to set some kind of framework on the initial pilot program that would allow us to have a targeted relief at the people who are the most vulnerable for losing their home to a foreclosure and the negative outputs from that. So
you think that the vulnerability increases from 65 to 70?
I don't know that that's the case, but we needed to set some sort of provision in terms of the limitations, and longer term, at the end of the presentation, once the 2-year pilot period expires, it's our intent to look at the data, and if this goes the way we think it will, which is that it's going to be very effective in helping people, the goal is to grow the program, to expand those parameters, to encourage investment in the program from community entities like our philanthropic partners, financial institutions, those sorts of entities longer term. But for this pilot period, we needed a group that we could test on.
The folks from CHN will know this off the top of their head. What's the area median income for average?
If that's a transition point, may I call Nina forward to cover the application piece?
I have one
Okay.
last question.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Oh, okay. If a party passes away, like a year after they sign this agreement, will there be amortization, which would allow the heirs to pay off and then sell the property of that $10,000, for example?
Yes, Madam Chairman, so I believe to the first point, and Nina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, area median income is 50,000-ish, 52,000, something in that ballpark. Is that right for Cuyahoga County? Yeah. So that's the first piece in terms of that. In terms of the amortization, that is not presently the plan. We can have that conversation, but
Things happen.
right,
And the
understandable.
kids will need the release of the heirs will need the release of them.
I think the thought process initially, at least, is that this is paying arrearages, right? So it's money that was already due and owing. If someone were to pass away now with an arrearage due and owing, that would need to be satisfied prior to transfer anyway, and that typically settles out of an estate. So I don't believe that we envision doing something differently in this space for that reason. But I'm amenable to having that conversation.
I just think it would be fair to have, a 3-year amortization period. So if mom lasted a year, then they pay the 2/3 as opposed to the whole thing.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, Mr. Keller, and then Ms.
So,
Hyman.
Madam Chair, to the director, my back of the envelope calculation suggests you might be able to help about 400 taxpayers, and that the number of people who could qualify is probably in the thousands. I'm wondering about the fairness of doing it first come, first serve, where it just depends on who has access to information the quickest, and it would seem it might be better to either establish an application deadline, and then whoever applies it by that deadline, you conduct a lottery, or else to have some kind of process where you decide which cases are the most urgent and the most in need. And my question is whether you've given thought to these alternatives and why you landed on first come, first serve.
Through the chair to the councilman, thank you for the question. We landed on first come, first serve for the reason you referred to in terms of fairness, right? And so in the interest of trying to, I hear what you're saying about access to information and those sorts of things. It is our intention to do broad outreach on this. We have had a pretty significant media impact on the program's availability already. There's already significant interest. I think we are around 500 or so folks who've completed the online interest form at this point. So we are doing our best to get the word out on that, and there'll be additional earned media opportunities for that. We're also planning to include an insert in the tax bills relative to the program's availability for the first half. So everyone who owns property will prospectively have that information, and we're also planning a direct letter campaign to the people we believe will be in that pool, which is I think around 4,000 residents or potentially eligible residents. So there is a plan to do some outreach. And in light of all of that outreach, we think first come, first serve is the best option for us. In terms of the number of folks that we think we can assist, our average in the pre-existing CHN program for the arrearage paid off was something around 2,800, which brings the number closer to 700. We think, just given all of the factors in the field, that we'll probably be able to help around 1,000 people. And again, it's a 2-year pilot program. So longer term, the plan is to help a lot more people. But in this initial phase, we want to get relief in the field as quickly as we can to help those folks.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director.
Kelly?
Madam Chair, to Mr. Crum, do we see any issue using funds that people have paid in fines and fees on delinquent taxes and then taking those dollars to help other people in the same situation they were in?
Through the chair to the councilman, it's a good question. The reason we settled on using the delinquent tax assessment and collection fund is that first and foremost, it is an allowable use of the funds. We've had conversations with the law department and with the prosecutor's office to verify that that was the case. These are funds that the treasurer's office retains from every dollar collected that was already delinquent, and the statutory kind of scheme that supports the DTAC fund is that we can use it to collect delinquent taxes. So this, we feel, very much is aligned with that mission, in that we're keeping people in their homes, we're collecting delinquent taxes, and we're putting them in a place where they're going to be able to be successful going forward. So you know, I understand the genesis of the question, but we feel it is an allowable use. It solves a current existing need, and it's consistent with kind of what the vision of the use of those funds would be otherwise. The other use that we mainly use the delinquent tax and collection, the DTAC fund for, is funding staff salaries to do collection work. You know, so again, we see this as being aligned with that.
Thank you. Ms. Simon?
Okay, thank you so much. So the criteria for this as an essential element is the taxpayer homeowner must have a delinquent tax payment contract for a deficiency, right? So
if there, yes, through the chair to the councilman, if there's a remaining delinquency after the initial 10,000 relief, then you have to have a contract to pay off that balance. And that's part of the counseling conversation.
Are we only looking for residents who are delinquent, or we're looking, yes?
Yeah.
That, okay, I just wanted to be very clear. So the only eligible applicants must have a delinquency, whether they're under contract or not, whether they're in foreclosure or not. What about that? What if they're in the court system?
So if they're, through the chair to the councilwoman, if they're in foreclosure, they are eligible for participation in this program. Again, the idea here is we're trying to keep seniors who are in the direst, most imminent threat of losing their home in their home, and deal with whatever deficiency is there in the exigent moment and then going forward. So we're going to say, okay, you're in a bad spot. We're going to give you this immediate relief to get through whatever got you here. And we're going to have you have conversations with housing counselors to make sure that you can sustain your housing going forward. Whatever that looks like, right? And that's part of the inflection too. If
I mean, if the income's not there to begin
Right.
with,
And
and
those
it's
are
not
difficult
sustainable,
conversations,
if
yeah.
it's clearly not sustainable, Social Security income is $1,000 and their mortgage payment is $1,500 to $2,000, what happens then? Why would we pull somebody out of that foreclosure knowing that tomorrow, inevitably, they're going to be in the same boat?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, it's a good question, and I think that's part of the vision for the program too, right? We want to be able to get people in the door and have a conversation. There's a reason they have the counseling before they're receiving the relief. So
Would
if
that
the
be
housing
and
counseling,
maybe this is a question for CHN, would that be a barrier? I mean, we've got to be smart. During COVID, we threw out tons of money for rental assistance, knowing, and it's happening now, that was not sustainable. But that was an acute problem that I certainly had no problem supporting. But again, here's the county maybe putting money into certain circumstances where we know it's going to fail. And do we
Right.
get a, so
I
know we
understand
have
that concern.
priority. I know we have priority on a foreclosure as the county, but so maybe that's a different question for the next guest. So I think I'll stop. I have more questions, but I'll stop.
No, it's a
with
good
that.
question, Councilwoman. And just to kind of get at that again, the reason the housing counseling is first is so if that's not sustainable, before the county is putting the money toward it, we're saying, okay, this situation maybe isn't sustainable for you. Let's find a situation that can be. That's what I mean by long-term
Okay.
housing
So
stability.
we might-
And
that
we're
might be a
not positioned to
barrier.
do that as the county.
Okay.
Our role in the system is not that, but someone needs to have that conversation with that resident, and that's why we have a partner that's able to do that.
And so
as
the
a nonprofit.
partner might say, no, this is not an eligible recipient of these funds, correct? We
Right.
have
They're
some
gonna assist us with that.
gatekeeper for that.
Mr. Gallagher, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I think Mr. Miller's idea of a lottery is the fairest way to do it, as opposed to some bureaucrats choosing, I don't see how that is less fair than that. I think that's a better way to go. But it's the first I'm hearing that you have to be in trouble to apply for these. It's not necessarily true that if you're in trouble on your taxes, that you're not in trouble. Why isn't this just being broadly offered across the board to those 70 and older? And how many people are 70 and older in the county?
Through the chair to the councilman, appreciate the question and the feedback on the lottery versus first come, first serve, so we'll consider that. No program is going to benefit everybody, right? So I'm not suggesting this is a silver bullet, but the program was designed to help the people who are in the worst of the worst straits and in the most imminent danger of losing a home. So that's why the folks who are already tax delinquent or maybe in a foreclosure is our targeted population for this particular tranche of relief. In terms of 70, again, it's a line drawing question, and for the sake of a pilot program, we needed to have some population we knew we could reasonably serve, and based on our data, we knew that there were probably about 1,000 residents we would be able to help with this money, while we wait for the longer term push for Columbus to figure out what they're going to do to fix the program more generally, whether that's improving the homestead reduction to cover more folks. That's really the solution to the phenomenon you're referring to, the people who are 65 to 70 or maybe younger than that even, or maybe make less or make more than 70. Those conversations go on, but they're really Columbus conversations. Ours is what can we do locally responsibly with the funds available to us to help the people who are in the worst of situations. So that's the rationale for where we got where we are.
My argument is that just because you're paying your taxes doesn't mean you're not in trouble.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're not, I've seen in our food bank in Strongsville, seniors coming in for toothpaste. And I'm positive their taxes are paid. So I don't know why this is more of a broad, fairer, because you've got it down to 70,000 a year. If you're 70 years old and 70,000 a year, how many of those people exist in Cuyahoga County? What's that pot?
Well, and through the chair to the councilman, I believe we settled on around 4,000 that are in that category.
About 4,000 of
We
those
think,
people?
but I mean, that's more art than science because there aren't really strong data to help us tie out. We don't collect demographic information related to taxes, right, beyond where people live and if they're on the homestead or not. So we have been working to try to identify what that hard number looks like, but we think it's around 4,000, and we think we can help around a quarter of those folks with this initial funding allocation.
Just, to me, I'm just looking at the fairness of it all and not being in their position, but knowing that I know people like that, or I've at least seen people like that it would be, if it's only 4,000, then I think the 4,000 should have a shot at this. Because again, just because you're not paying your taxes doesn't mean you're not eating also. I mean, this is without question a vulnerable group of people.
So this,
And some people do feel that it's necessary, very important to pay their taxes and skip a couple meals. And I'm just wondering,
So
and of
let-
course, you're using the funds of those that have been delinquent to pay for those that now are delinquent, as opposed to not helping those that have paid but aren't eating.
so let's ask another question. Did, when we look at the structure of the finding of the agreement with CHN, yes, it might be time to bring Nina and Laura to the podium. We have an allocation for administrative costs, which allows them to do counseling, and I do believe that CHN is a HUD-certified counseling center, so they can do both counseling for mortgages as well as for foreclosure. And so let's bring them to the table and ask what their capacity is. Is it beyond the small number? Because they're building on their existing capacity. So
Certainly.
that might be helpful.
Happy to do
for
that.
all of us to know.
Would you like to come forward?
I do know enough about you to be dangerous.
Morning.
Good morning. If for the record, you'll both state your name and your role with CHN, please.
My name is Laura Bustani, and I'm the VP of External Affairs for CHN Housing Partners.
And my name is Nina Holzer. I'm the Director of Financial Mobility with CHN Housing Partners.
Okay, ladies. If you could finish answering the question that Mr. Gallagher threw out and I edited, and then move into your presentation.
And in terms of whether or not the requirement that they are delinquent should be in place in order for them to receive assistance specifically. Assuming that's the question, right?
That's the first part of it.
And can you repeat the second part?
The second part is, are you capable of doing counseling for people who don't qualify for this program in a large enough number to begin to counsel people so that they can manage their budgets better, maybe, and so that they literally, his statement was, yes, people who are paying their taxes, but they don't have enough money for toothpaste. Of their
I respect that viewpoint. I do think that there are quite a few, we saw during the pandemic, people making those tough choices between, am I paying my rent, am I paying my mortgage, am I keeping up with my tax bill? And so I fully understand and respect that seniors are making that trade-off. I think that part of the discussion that we had over the course of the development of this program was, given that it is $2 million in direct assistance and there is limited capacity, should we be narrow for the first iteration of the pilot? And I do think that there are going to be a significant number of seniors who are already delinquent, who might eat up that $2 million quite quickly. When we put out the information form, I believe last week after the public announcement, we received over 500 inquiries almost overnight. And so my concern is that we are going to get flooded very quickly, given that there's a high volume of folks who need this help. And then to the second part of the question, we currently have a foreclosure prevention team. Through this program, we are planning on adding 2 additional counselors who will be fully focused on providing this foreclosure prevention assistance. Typically, those counselors will see between 8 to 10 people a week. So our goal is that we would have 2 additional counselors assisting about 40 to 50 clients a month. And so we're with that capacity, feel that we could get through and assist all of the folks who have submitted those info forms and would be submitting a full application. It's a lot of numbers.
No, so the question is, can we handle additional capacity for counseling even if we don't have additional capacity for the up to $10,000 loans?
So if clients are
We
entering
run
the
out of
program-
money,
Yep.
can we still give counseling?
Sure, I think that we would be adding full-time staff to this program. So regardless of the assistance, if someone is coming in, they're receiving the counseling before they're getting approved for the direct assistance. So we're building it in a way where that capacity would be available.
So we can continue to take care of some of our seniors, even if we run out of the $10,000.
And we do have strong partnerships with the other housing counseling agencies that are available in the county. So Benjamin Rose, Famicos, for example. So we're hoping that we will be also able to tap our partners who also have resources and can provide that great counseling.
So Benjamin Rose is doing it exclusively for seniors?
That is my understanding, and I know that they've had a property tax loan program. I don't know what the status is of that program, though.
Is there another question? Ms. Simon?
I'll let the presentation go and bring the treasurer back up.
Okay.
Thanks.
And do I need to do, okay, there we go, perfect. So I'm gonna talk about the application process and program administration. And this is very comparable to the program that we are administering over the course of the pandemic, which was funded by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency through homeowner assistance funds. Through that program, we assisted almost 1,000 households, different eligibility criteria, but still a very high volume crisis program that we were administering for almost 3 years, I want to say. So in terms of the application process, CHN, through our current portal, we intake applications on a first come, first served basis. We do have the ability to put certain prioritization elements in place. So if someone is in foreclosure, if they are at risk of sheriff's sale, for example, we can put in place different things to bump them up in the queue if that's something the county would like us to build into our application process. Otherwise, the applications enter our queue, and again, our process first come, first serve. Through that application, we get client contact information, demographic information, income and asset information, and any other required documentation that we need to vet the household to make sure that they are eligible for the program. If we're missing documentations, we do have admin staff that will reach out to the household. And over the course of 10 days, typically, we reach out multiple times to say, hey, we're missing a pay stub, or maybe it's a pension letter, whatever that may be. And so we'll contact the household by email, text, and phone multiple times in order to collect any missing documentation that we need in order to process the file. Once a file is fully vetted and it's had that first round of eyes on it to gauge eligibility, the file is then assigned to a counselor. Like I said, typically a counselor, one of our HUD-approved housing counselors, has the ability to meet with anywhere from 8 to 10 households per week. So they will have time slots built into their schedule during the day, but we are also very client-focused. So if someone's not available during the day, if they could only meet in the evenings or on the weekends, we do make those time slots available so that we can serve as many folks as possible. So once the counselor reviews the client's application, they'll be meeting with them to get a sense of what their housing goals are, current finances, any hardship that they experienced that led to this housing instability and inability to pay their property taxes. They will then work with the household to co-develop a budget, a spending plan, and discuss strategies for managing their income and expenses moving forward. Part of our administration of the foreclosure prevention program during the housing crisis in the late 2000s was we work really closely with households to understand their situation. And sometimes part of it is having that tough conversation around a disposition strategy if the math just doesn't math out anymore. So we are familiar with that and have that experience, unfortunately, for those households where they just don't have the income to manage their household expenses anymore. From there, the applicant is working with the counselor on creating an action plan, applying for any other programs that maybe they are not benefiting from currently. So we did see a lot of households during our first version of the property tax assistance programs who would have been eligible for owner occupancy credit or homestead and just weren't currently participating. And so we can work with those households to ensure that they are getting those credits and are getting hooked up to other programs that they may need in order to balance their budget and get settled. And then lastly, once we have completed counseling, vetted for eligibility, the household is eligible for this up to $10,000 in direct assistance. The counselor will be submitting a funding request. Every single file where there is funding associated gets 2 sets of eyes. So the counselor looks at it, our admin looks at it, and then it gets approved by a manager who's also going through the file to make sure that we have all the documentation and they've done everything that they have said they're going to do prior to the household getting the assistance. We will be sending an intent to pay email to the applicant, and then a check is cut and delivered. An individual check is cut for each household and delivered to the county. Applicants are required to sign up for Easy Pay, and if they do have delinquent taxes and are required to get on a payment plan, that check will be held until we have evidence that they've signed up for Easy Pay or signed up for that payment plan. And then following the check being delivered to the county, we will follow up with the household 30, 60, 90 days after counseling to check in and see how things are going. And assuming that they are stable, sticking to that action plan and budget, don't need any additional assistance, the file is resolved and closed out. Though certainly if they indicate that they need some additional assistance, the counselor is available to meet with them again, connect them to other programs and resources, and we will be there to assist until the file ultimately gets closed out.
I have a question.
Shelley, did you have a question on this part?
This actually, if the treasurer could come back up for this part, please.
Before we continue, are there additional questions for our partners, or
I
may they
did.
go?
I had questions for the
great.
partners.
Thanks.
So do you want me to wait?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so, hi, Nina. The question I have is, during COVID and our the relief we extended to tenants, I asked the question about sustainability then, and did you keep statistics about the longevity of what we paid to these tenants, whether they were able to stay in their unit for extended periods of time, or we just let that go and hope for the best? And that's okay if that's the answer, because it was a pretty intense time.
Through that program, my understanding is that clients were only receiving the direct assistance. There wasn't a counseling element built in. So once the check was cut, there wasn't the follow-up. Whereas with this program, we are building the counseling in so that we have that mechanism for following up with folks.
So with this program, if it proceeds, we'll be able to monitor the success or not success of what we're doing.
Our goal would be, through this program, we would have that 30, 60 to 90-day check-in period to say, are you still in the home? Obviously, if there are some of those provisions in place around making sure that they are maintaining residency and primary ownership of the property afterwards, we would only be checking with them on what was in their counseling plan.
I see.
But then can make sure to the county would have the data to be able to see
Man,
someone.
who's going to follow up with that? I mean, 30, 60, 90 days isn't going to tell us the success of this program, because this might get them over a year and they're going to be back in the same place if nothing changed.
We'll track that. Our office.
Your
will-
office
yeah,
is
we
gonna
have
track
a
that?
delinquent tax outreach staff that will be tracking that on the county side. And we have some general information from the pre-existing program. Again, the difference being housing counseling not present, right? So it was just, here's money,
Right,
stay in your house.
right. That's right.
40 to 50% of those people were delinquent again
Yep.
within a year.
Yep.
And that's probably not surprising because we didn't address the root causes.
Okay.
And that's what the idea is with housing counseling services, is we can get at, what are the root instances that are causing this to happen.
Do you refer people to look at a bankruptcy if they have credit card debt? That's, is that part of your counseling? Because they get caught up in that? Okay.
Yeah, we, typically what we will do is full budget analysis. So we'll run credit reports, we'll sit down with them to really dig into what their debts are, what are your monthly payments, installment payments you may have. And that is, we have a very detailed spending plan that we go through with the client to really understand what money is coming in, what money is going out, and when. And does an ongoing tax payment make sense given all of the obligations that you have in place?
Okay.
Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to our treasurer. So is there a reason that the county can't do a lot of this themselves without having to pay these different fees?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes. And the short answer is that we don't have anybody on staff who does housing counseling. It takes some period of time to become HUD certified. We really want people to be, understatement maybe. So we really want people to be able to have the highest quality provision of service possible. And CHN has an existing track record of doing this work that we feel really comfortable with.
So looking at your chart here, looks like those fees would be just under $830,000 for this 2-year period?
Well, and excuse me, through the chair to the councilman, just to be clear, that's the services themselves. So I wanted to make a distinction between the housing counseling service itself, which is the value add, and then the administrative costs. So the administrative costs are closer to 161, I think. My print on my printout is very, very small. Sorry, I apologize for that. But yeah, it is just under $1 million over the 2 years for the total provision of housing counseling services. That's actually less than, the budget presented here is actually less than what's proposed in the resolution, which would have been $1 million. So we are pretty comfortable with the fact that they're being good stewards about that part of the program, and any additional funding that isn't utilized in that space would become available for direct service for the conduit payments for the release of the delinquent tax.
So does CHN make the administration fee regardless of how many households are helped?
Can you clarify the question?
Well, what if only one is helped? Or
They'd be
what if there's...
decertified by HUD, probably.
I don't envision that taking place. Would there be an underutilization of some kind? That's something we'd have to revisit with law, et cetera, to come to a conclusion on that. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. As we've spoken about, we believe there is a significant need, and I don't think we're going to be in a situation where we're underutilizing.
So if it was underutilized, would the administration fee remain the same?
I can't speak to that because I believe that is a hypothetical that would be dealt with at that time. It's a contractual legal conversation, I think, rather than what I've got the capacity to answer today.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Then Gallagher. No, I think the work they do has to be compensated, whether the outcome is, one way or the other. It's still a service that I think we'll have to pay.
Well, and to speak to the construction of that budget, maybe this is something that I should have asked CHN to discuss, but it's a fee-for-service structure, so their administrative fee is going to be directly tied to the number of folks that they're serving, right? Yeah. But that's, that again, we would have to revisit that at the time. I don't think it's going to be a...
Let's look at their track record, because what this is saying to me is that Mr. Kelly doesn't understand their volume, and I'm impressed with their volume. So, Nina, could you come back up to the microphone, please? On an average year, they're required by their relationship with NeighborWorks America to report how many units of counseling they've done.
Correct.
Are you on a calendar year with them, or are you on a June to July year with them?
I believe it starts now.
So I know that you would have just finished your quarterly report, because I just did mine. And how many housing counselors do you have, and how many units of counseling did you provide in housing counseling in general and in foreclosure counseling?
So CHN Housing Partners has 9 HUD-certified housing counselors, myself included, and we would be adding 2 HUD-certified housing counselors with this program if it were to pass. On average, our goal is to serve 100 households through our foreclosure prevention program in its current state, given that we, after post-pandemic, saw a little bit of a decrease because there were so many foreclosure prevention dollars on the street through the prior homeowner assistance fund program. We saw a little bit of a decrease in those requests, so adjusted accordingly.
100 a month or 100 a year?
We have one foreclosure prevention counselor who's working full-time on our foreclosure prevention program, and her goal is to serve at least 10 households a month.
And then how much housing counseling in general do the other folks do?
So we have, I just did our HUD 9902. We serve about 300 households a year on rental housing counseling, another 500 in group education. I think it's 250 in pre-purchase housing counseling, and another 50 in reverse mortgage counseling. So we have a very high volume shop at CHN Housing Partners. And again, if we have 9 to 10 counselors, myself included, and they're expected to see anywhere from 8 to 10 clients a week, with the foreclosure prevention counseling being per month, because it's a much more significant and deep relationship with those individuals.
And if I may add, we've been doing this for how many decades?
Over 20 years at this point.
And we've never had an underutilization problem in this area at all.
That helps provide you some information. It's a legitimate concern. We buy into projects all the time that don't achieve their goals. So I understand Mr. Kelly's questions because he doesn't do housing like I do. So I've seen their work over the years. And they went from 0 to 100 with the pandemic activity. And I think we exceeded our original goals for the pandemic activity. So,
Yeah.
For the rental assistance,
yes, with the rental assistance.
the goal kept increasing because we did so well that a lot of the clawed-back dollars at the state from different regions of the state came back to Cuyahoga County. So we, at the end of the day, helped about 30,000 households and deployed about $100 million, which is more than some states combined. It was a very successful program. Unfortunately, the need was that high.
Okay. Any other, Ms. Simon?
To the treasurer, I think when we look at how to allocate these funds, because they're so limited, and it's a drop in the bucket, is what we're doing. I'd like to see an equitable way to do this in terms of council districts, that each council district is going to have an allocation and allow that the funds to flow through the council districts based on the criteria.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Do you or the folks from CHN have any thoughts about that? We have 11 council districts.
I think we'll have a conversation about it. And speaking to the councilwoman's concern about dropping the bucket, the way that I would, I guess, phrase that is that this is necessary but not sufficient to address the need. It's what we as a county are able to do in our local community, given the resource constraints that we face, while we wait for, the cavalry to come from Columbus with longer-term solutions for us. So, I recognize we're not going to help everybody that we want to help. I would love to do more, but I've only got the available dollars available to me to address the problem in front of us. So that's what we're going to try to do. In terms of the council district allocation piece, the need is distributed potentially. I'd want to know that, right? Like, I want to know what the need looks like, what that distribution is, in terms of the proportionality of that.
Well,
But
I'm going
that's
to
the
stop you
conversation
right
we
there
have to have.
because
There's need
the
everywhere,
criteria is
absolutely,
there. And I bet you that if you picked one district, no matter whose district, Kelly's district, Jack Schron's district, you're going to have everybody signing up who will probably meet the criteria.
Absolutely, there's need everywhere. It's a proportionality
so if
question.
now we're going to start
right.
looking at, we have a criteria, and it's not drilling down on need as you are contemplating, I think, in front of me, correct? I mean, if there's criteria, there are 10 things, we want to make sure that the people I want to make sure that each of the districts will be able to maximize this criteria that
Yeah.
you've set forth. You're pushing back a little bit. I sense that now you're thinking there should be other criteria.
Through the chair of the councilman, it's not so much other criteria as the line drawing issue that gets raised by that. And again, proportionality is a question. So I'm hearing from the committee that the allocation rule, whether that's first come, first serve or lottery or some kind of council district allocation or some other mechanism, is a thing we need to do more work on. So I will note that and we'll talk to our team about it.
Good, thanks.
Mr. President? you
If
have
I
a
understood
question?
correctly, the universe of need is in the neighborhood of a little more than 4,000?
That's our approximation, yeah.
So your goal is ultimately, even with the pilot, to hopefully address in the coming years the entire universe of need.
The longer term goal, absolutely, once we have data from our pilot to kind of show cause that this is an effective way to get at this problem and keeps people in a sustainable position, is to expand those criteria to reach more folks, to encourage community partners to participate, to utilize more funding that's not just our small delinquent tax allocation, and to grow it out that way.
And bring the foundations in as well.
That's the longer term plan.
Initial success.
Right.
You certainly heard a robust conversation around who those first 1,000 should be in those early need. But I'm glad we ultimately targeting the entire universe. Can't imagine how many, I can't even count all the times we've had projects where the entire universe was ever fully considered or even a legitimate stab at meeting the full need. My hope is that you ultimately do get the full need of 4,000, the need met of the full 4,000 universe. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Other questions? Because I saw him turn his mic on and then turn it off, so. This is to be a pilot, is that what you're saying? So we're test driving this for now?
That's correct. This is a 2-year pilot program. The idea is to show our work and be able to demonstrate that this is an effective way to get at this issue, and then to grow the program eventually.
I think that Mr. Kelly's concern about volume and making sure that we are not giving administrative dollars where we don't have volume is important. Could this committee have a report? That way we get a chance to see. For those who believe, not a problem. For those who don't, it helps them learn. Mr. Kelly, what would you think would be a fair reporting time?
Talking about before we vote on this as a full council or after?
After, because they have to get the money in order to begin the work. And then we want them to report back to us what they've accomplished in a 6-month period or a 1-year period?
6 months. Let's do 6 months.
So we know early? Ms. Simon?
So today, we're just voting on the partnership money for Sage on administrative cost, right? But I'm not happy with this, the way we're handling the program overall. And I don't know if we should be entering into a contract with CHN until we know what the program is going to look like, in all deference to the chair. Because right now what I'm hearing is first come, first serve, and lotto, and potentially all of this money going to one city.
So you'd like for them to come back to us
Yes.
with more detail
Yes.
before we move
With a
this out of
program that we
committee?
should be able to, agree with or not. I'd like to vote on the program.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, if I may, part of the thought process that we presently have is that there is an emergent need in the sense that the tax bills that come out at the end of December, beginning of January are going to include increases related to the valuation change. So whatever program we have in place, we really believe strongly needs to be in place for utilization when those tax bills are available, and preferably a little before, so we have some time to kind of get our legs under us and understand, where the kinks may be in that system, so that it's ready for
I
prime
get
time when
it.
we have a
But
mandate.
this
So-
is sort of, you're asking me, I'll speak for me, agree to a contract for a program that council's it's not fully flushed. I mean, we're voting on giving money, but we don't know what the program is, and I might not like the program, how it's going to be structured. So you need to come back and as quickly as possible now and explain to us how you're going to allocate these funds. I don't want District 11 or District 1 having one, or Gallagher's district, having only a few people, and then the city of Cleveland gets its 90%. It's not clear to me that that's not going to be the outcome. So I need to have I need a program and how we're going to disperse this money before I am going to approve a contract. And I like a pilot. I think this is great, but we don't even know what this really is going to look like. And by the way, I don't think we need the tax bills to show people are in distress. I mean, there's already enough people to fulfill this program, I believe. What did you say, 400, 700? That we think this will serve, who are already in need and throughout the county. So even with the new tax valuations, I don't think that's going to change the demographics of what we're looking at.
Okay.
Mr. Gallagher.
And I'd be very clear with the public, because I've actually heard from seniors that would have qualified that now don't qualify.
Mr. Can I ask for clarification on the basis of what
They
they not
paid their
qualify?
taxes, but they're 70 and over, make 70 or less, and they paid their taxes.
Yeah.
They're out of luck.
Okay, it was always envisioned as a delinquent tax-related program, so I don't know.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, that's all right.
I do now, and it actually is more twisted for me that you're using delinquent tax dollars from delinquent people to pay for delinquent tax dollars from people that are delinquent, to get them out of delinquency maybe, although it seems to be a program to flush them into or funnel them into programming that may or may not work, we would hope would work. I wish there were infinite dollars for 4,000, 70 years and older, $70,000 a year. I understand there isn't. So I think you need to be very clear with that, because I've already heard from people that I now have to go back and say, no, because you did the right thing, again, you're out.
And again, I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Councilman. This is a limited program meant to help people who are in the worst of straits
I know
stay in their home and get themselves
you gotta
square
crawl
going
before
forward.
you
So
walk. I understand
That's, the delinquent tax fund is meant to collect delinquent tax dollars. So I understand where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, this puts those delinquent tax dollars into the county coffers and also gets people in a position where they'll be able to sustainably pay on a go-forward basis. So that's very much in line with the idea.
We in this room understand that.
Sure.
The average person on the street does not. All I'm asking is that you be very clear about it, because you're going to get hopes up, and then that creates a disconnect with that individual or those individuals. So I just want to be delicate with that, so that they know what's going on. And, if they don't qualify, they don't qualify.
Yeah, and my staff and I are having those conversations with taxpayers now. So we're well prepared to do that, and we will be referring people over to the things that they may be qualified for that do exist. That's also part of it, to your point. It's to get people in the
You
door,
really have to-
connected with the assistance we've got.
And I appreciate where you're at and where you started and where you're at right now, but you've got to tighten this up. You've got to tighten this up, as Ms. Simon and Mr. Kelly was saying. It's going to be helpful down the road, especially if it's successful, so we know how to go forward or adjust as we fly.
Mr. President?
And I would say it's always a challenge to articulate to the community how we move, what our thought process is. Being transparent is always best, but that's why I keep coming back to, if the universe is 4,000, the goal is to, over the time period, to serve everyone who is in need. But and I like that statement, there's a finite amount of resources, infinite amount of need, but finite amount of resources. And we're looking to help those who are about to lose their homes. That's the world that, when it's all said and done, we want to make sure people don't fall off the tax rolls.
Right.
And that is, and if that's 1,000 people, it's only 50, that's great. But if it's 1,000, we should know those people who are about to lose their homes, this is where it should start, okay? If they're able to still keep their home but clearly have other challenges, maybe there are other agencies that can support them with where they are. But we want to make sure that we are dealing with those who are losing their homes. I have individuals in my district who I know are in a threat of losing their home. And if there's someone else in another community that's losing their home, I want them to be helped too.
That's right.
But let's make sure the main thing stays the main thing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, it's a deadly serious problem for those who are in that situation, and we want to do what we can to help them with that. So I appreciate that feedback.
Okay, I'm seeing 3 of the 5 people here saying we need a little more time. Is that what I'm hearing?
And Madam Chair, if I may, just for the sake of getting it on the record, we had an intention to ask for second reading suspension approval of the program at the next council meeting. So just for the sake of saying that that was the intention of coming today, I wanted to do that. And also because it's a public forum, I want to make sure everyone who may see this later knows that the interest form is live on the county's website where people can go and kind of get their information in the hopper for us. If
Madam
and
Chair,
when the program is approved. So.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the urgency is. Now, you come before us now and want urgency. You meet in my colleague's district without, it's not your problem, but not even telling him with the heads up of what the program really is. And now you
But
expect us to.
that's not a correct statement,
Okay,
Councilwoman.
all right, I take that back. But
Thank you.
there's just been some moving forward with this without having council involved. And now you show up one day and think we're going to suspend when the program is not fully fleshed out. I'm very concerned about the whole county being served with this, and what I'm presented with, it's not. So there's no urgency here. You're waiting about tax bills. What does it have to do with this program? Because you're sending it out in the mail with it?
So through the chair to the councilwoman, just by way of clarifying what our education process has been with respect to the program and our solicitation of feedback about what we can do, we started, I probably should have led with this, we started having conversations with individual members of council as early as the spring when that DSAS study started. We've done outreach to every member of council to try to set up meetings. That is something I'm continuing to have interest in doing. So happy to have those individual one-on-one conversations, but we definitely have
Okay, I just want to
done
back
that.
you up. So
So
you're
whether or
saying
not
that
that
you reached
landed-
out, excuse me,
Yeah, that's
your
right.
office reached out to all 11 of us to talk
ma'am.
about this program?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, we continue to want to have those conversations. But in terms of the urgency, again, I understand what you're saying about the need exists, but we know that the tax bills, when they go out, that have increases in them are going to create an additional level of anxiety, and we want to be able to help people deal with that. So that's why having this done and in the field before we have the tax bill land is important. So I can understand different perspective, but that's where we're coming from as to why that's important to
So
our
we're
office.
not going to disagree with you on the concept. We think that the details are not worked out in such a way that you can get a majority of this council committee to support it.
Appreciate that.
So what I'm going to ask you to do is that you and your team will have to meet with some of us. I will commit to making time available in the next 2 weeks for you. If you'll work with Cynthia on our team to make my schedule mix with your schedule. If I can't lead this in a good direction, we got a problem. So, I will be seeking input from my colleagues, potentially looking at their schedules to make sure more than one of them can be with me when I meet with you, so that we can get this solved. It is not that we want to stop this kind of conceptual design. We just want to make sure it meets more of our collective needs.
Certainly, and we want a program that's going to serve the residents as effectively as possible. So I'm not, don't misunderstand my pushback. I am amenable to additional feedback and more conversation, with the caveat that I want to make sure we're moving as quickly as we can to help as many people as we can. So I appreciate that.
This potentially would, make residents feel worse, that they think there's hope, and there's very few that are going to get any kind of satisfaction out of this. And it's a backfire potential situation for a government to put out a program and not have funding to serve the constituents. And that I see a pretty angry pushback on this rather than people saying this is a great program, maybe the few that get it. And by the way, Council President, this pilot is only looking to serve 400 to 700, is that right, 4 to 7?
We believe it will serve around 1,000.
You think 1,000?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So those are just my concerns. I would like you to come back with how you're going to serve every district. When I meet with you through the chair, I want to make sure every district has its own lottery or ability to participate in this.
Okay.
That's my criteria.
Mr. President?
Madam Chair, let me ask, you mentioned the foundations in time, once the pilot, but have you reached out to them in advance and see if they were willing to buy in from the start, where we might tackle the entire universe?
Through the chair to the council president, we have not had those conversations yet because we want to be able to show our work first.
But I mean,
so I understand.
Don't show the work.
Right, I understand.
Because they do fund both ways.
Well, and the other, and through the chair to the council president, the other kind of consideration for not doing that outreach now is that I think the funding cycle is such that the end of the year is not when those asks land best with philanthropy. So that's consideration number one. And again, from our perspective, there's urgency to do something now and to not wait for, these additional kind of pieces to come together. So for good or for ill, that's kind of the rationale for what we got where we are.
Yeah. Council President, it's just a pilot, and then we'll see at the end how it goes before I would approach any philanthropic organization, because maybe this is going to flop. We don't know yet.
Mr. Gallagher?
Do we not know who these people are right now
We don't collect demographic information
that are in
on
delinquency?
taxpayers. So we know who is delinquent and has the homestead exemption. And so in those cases,
you
we
don't
can
know the-
extrapolate.
don't
But
know
the
the-
homestead, it's not a perfect one-to-one because the homestead exemption is 65 versus 70. Right. So as I said before, it's more art than science to arrive at what our pool is, but
So
we have a
what-
rough sense of who it is.
We know how many homestead exemptions are out there. What is that number in general? Can you ballpark it for me?
I may have that, just a moment. I don't have the full homestead list, but I did have the list of folks who were on homestead and in delinquency, I believe.
Okay.
Just a moment. I think that's wrong, actually. Yeah, I'll have to do some more homework on that. I'm sorry, I don't have that figure in front of me off the top of my head.
Okay. We're going to hold this for at least 2 weeks, right?
When are those tax bills, I'm sorry, through the chair, when do you want those tax bills to go out at the end of what? No.
So just as a reminder, the tax collection calendar shifted, right? So the due date's going to be mid-February. We want the tax bills in the field electronically mid to late December, and in mailboxes late December to early January.
so there's
So
time.
that's the rough.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that we don't expire the council's meeting calendar because
Okay. No,
that's sooner than that.
Thank you.
Understood. That's why I offered to meet with you in the next 2 weeks. Although I have a couple of glitches because the state of Ohio has a housing conference the first week of November, and I'm usually out of commission those 2 or 3 days in Columbus with everybody else who wants to do housing. I think they're going to be there too. I know Laura will be there at least. So the reality is this is a very busy time for the housing industry. So please, early mornings are good for me before I go off on my other journeys. So let's take a look at getting something on the calendar today within the next 2 weeks. And that way I can circulate it to my colleagues. Any other questions or comments?
Just so I understand, Madam Chair, in 2 weeks, we would have another community development meeting.
If there is input that looks like it might answer some of your concerns. If we are a bust, no, but definitely if they make an effort to answer some of the legitimate concerns about distribution, first come, first serve versus a lottery, those kinds of things.
There should be offline conversation with us, with the
Yes.
treasurer between
Yes.
now and then.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you.
And Madam Chair, the next potential Community Development Committee meeting we could have is November 18th.
Okay. Oh, so that's almost 3 weeks.
Yes.
That gives us a little more breathing time. Okay. Madam Clerk, have I forgotten anything?
There are no other matters for consideration.
Miscellaneous business from any of my colleagues? Hearing no further business, I want to thank you all for attending today, and this meeting is adjourned.